Today we're talking about how to respond to rude comments. Those moments you're caught off guard by something that wasn't nice. Do you say something? Do you not say something? What do you say? All that and more coming right up. Welcome to the Jefferson Fisher Podcast, where I'm on a mission to make your next conversation the one that changes everything. If you enjoy learning tools to improve your communication, I'm going to ask you to subscribe or follow this podcast. And please leave a review. It really does help. And if you have any suggestions on topics, as always, just throw them in the comments. The next time someone makes a rude comment towards you, here's what I want you to do. Number one, begin your response with the phrase, "Did you mean?" It's a question of intent. We're going to go into detail on that. Did you mean? Number two, if it's a more passive-aggressive type of rude comment, in other words, it's not directly at you, it's more off to the side, and you know and they know it was meant for you. We're going to have questions that check them. These are questions like, did I offend you in some way? Or are you doing all right? It sounds like you're having a hard day. There are ways that you can check them without coming across like you're also wanting to be rude. And number three, my personal favorite response to a rude comment is nothing at all. You respond with absolute silence. But there's a technique and a trick on how to do it correctly. And here's the thing about rude comments. They're tests. There are ways for the other person to test and assess what your temperature is. Can they get a reaction to you or not? So I want you to pretend it's like a card game. Now you have a set of cards, they have a set of cards. When they first make that rude comment, they're playing a 2. You have a choice. Do I play this game or do I not? Maybe you decide that you want to. You're going to lay a 4. Or they're going to lay another rude comment and then they play a 7. And you go, okay, how far do I push this? How far do we go in these rude comments between one another? And that's a bad game to play because nobody wins. All right, everybody's going to lose in that game. One of you is going to have to apologize, and it's typically the person who plays the last card. Whoever says the worst thing that shuts the game down is typically the person who is now the responsibility to apologize first. When you can end it all by just not playing the game. Rude comments are like platforms to where if they say something rude and you say something rude, well, you've now just justified them in taking another step. You've now justified and said, convinced them that you are every bit of the comment that they just made. Because now instead of being curious about it and saying, hey, where's this coming from? Instead, you're doubling down on it, which makes it look like you're confirming what they said and saying, yeah, but you're this and you're that and you're X, Y, and Z. They're just going to get more defensive and then it's going to continue to ramp up. So it's a losing game, lose-lose situation. Don't do it.
So let's assume that someone's made a rude comment towards you. Now, rude comments, in my opinion, are ones that they're not terribly insulting, like super condescending, bad things that you would say directly to somebody. But they're also not polite, they're not nice, they're not kind. They can fall in between. And usually they catch you off guard, that you're not expecting them in some way. And at that moment, you have a decision. Do I respond or do I not respond? And the answer depends on the context. It also depends on the relationship. But let's assume in this situation, you're walking into a meeting and you have somebody that you know is, you two really don't get along all that much, but they make this comment. They say, well, it's nice of you to finally show up. In that moment, you know that's a dig. The other people around know that's a dig. But they may not know the history between you two. So you're stuck in this situation of, what do I say? Because if I'm ugly and I bring up past stuff, the people around you aren't going to understand. But they will understand if you decide to be rude right in that moment. So how you respond matters. What I like to suggest in number one is you use the question, did you mean? And you insert different ways to respond. For example, did you mean for that to sound rude? Did you mean to embarrass me? Did you mean to upset me? When you say, did you mean, you give them a chance to clarify. You give them a chance to assess what they just said. It's a question of intent, meaning you want to find out what was your intent in saying that. What were you trying to achieve by making that comment? And so when you say things that are questions of intent, you make them double back on what they said. And often you can avoid an argument altogether. Because let's assume that this person who made this comment, well, they're not really just they weren't really trying to be ugly. It came out the wrong way. That's not what they were really trying to say. So when you say, did you mean to embarrass me? Or did you mean for that to sound offensive or rude? 9 times out of 10, when you call them to the mat on that kind of question, they'll say, oh, no, what I meant to say was, oh, no, what I meant to do. And they try and clarify, or they backtrack, or they further explain. And that makes you look more wise. It looks like you have integrity. It looks like you're the one that's being the bigger person by checking it rather than just assuming their intent on it. And I also want to explain that this works really well with text or email. How many times have you been in a communication with someone and the text just read the wrong way? You ever had somebody just say "K" or "okay" when you all of a sudden just felt like, oh, that's just them being dismissive. They're not really taking me seriously. And automatically you just want to shut them off. You go, oh, okay, fine. I don't have to be like that. Easy way to check that is for you to text, did you mean for that to be short? Did you mean for that to sound like you're upset? Often they'll clarify that and say, no. I was just in the middle of something, or I was during an errand. I was making a cup of coffee and I just wanted to let you know that I got the text. So often you can have this sense of giving grace to other people by just simply asking the question and setting up the phrase, did you mean? It can really put out arguments before they even start.
Now, I also want you to dial in on passive-aggressive comments that are rude. Passive-aggressive comments, as you know, they're not direct, meaning they don't feel comfortable in their personality to say things to your face. Instead, they will say them in a way that's kind of snarky and snide off to the side because they don't feel comfortable saying them directly to face. So here's what I mean. Let's assume you're in a conversation with someone and they make this comment. I mean, it'd be nice, if somebody cared. You both know it's aimed towards you, but instead they couch it in terms of it'd be nice if somebody cared. How you deal with that is you pull them out of their current environment, meaning you have to make them step back in the conversation, understanding what they just said. So if they were to make that comment, it would be nice if somebody cared. You respond with a question that checks them, like this. It sounds like there's more to that. It sounds like there's more to that. In that moment, you're pulling them out. And they go, oh, wait, what did I just say? And you're calling them to the mat in a way that says, what exactly are you trying to say? Do you understand what you just said? It sounds like there's more to what you're telling me. In other words, I'm catching this passive-aggressive behavior, and I'm not just going to let it fly by. Another way to ask is, it sounds like you're having a hard day. Or it sounds like we need to have another discussion, or we need to talk a little bit more. Using these phrases like, it sounds like, it seems like, and throwing things out there in a way that encourages them to talk more is going to get you a whole lot farther than just saying, oh, you're talking about me? You wish I cared? Let me tell you about, that's going to just make it even worse. So instead, you're going to catch them with questions that say, it sounds like, or it seems like. Now my favorite. Number 3 is to respond with silence. But there is a trick, a technique that I like to do, and that is to count. Well, you don't have to count, but it needs to last